So good afternoon and welcome to all of you for this online talk organized by the European School of Administration in collaboration with Instituto Cervantes. Today the topic, Europe is woven in silk. You see the session is being recorded and you will get the link to the recording and the slides in a couple of days. Thank you so much. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Blanca, and thank you to our very distinguished group of guests today, coming from courtesy of the Instituto Cervantes. We're really happy to welcome you to our session. This is another one of our USA online talks, where we're always looking for speakers that can make you learn and reflect and think and exchange about issues dealing with politics, economics, societal questions, and as you see, something as broad and different as today's topic about silk. As you may know, we have had 200 talks since the start of confinement. You can always check them out because they're all recorded. So you only have to go to our website of the USA, and there you will find these 200 sessions that we have already had for you. And I'm sure that please take a moment to look at them because there's something for everyone. Another one of our objectives is to inform you and learn about questions that can also take us back in our history and understand, our culture, understand these cultural issues that have shaped our European identity. And this is what we will do today with the collaboration, as I said, of the Instituto Cervantes, and opening a series of events on different issues of general interest that we will have the pleasure to offer you together with Instituto Cervantes. Today, we will look at how knowledge about heritage plays a key role, as I mentioned, in the construction of our identity, helping us to understand our common past and establishing the foundations for our shared future. We will look now at how the interaction between culture, trade routes, and technology has taken place for 1,000 years and continues to do so today. Silk has a unique role at a European and global scale. It demonstrates the relevance of textile production as a tool for East-West cultural relations. It is not only an object of consumption in many environments, it also brings together entrepreneurs, designers, engineers, scholars, cultural institutions, international diplomacy, and national or local authorities, among others. So let's discover today together a bit more about the unique universe of silk. I would like, of course, as I said several times, this is a collaboration with Instituto Cervantes. It's only normal that I now address myself to Gonzalo as a representative of Cervantes Brussels today. So Gonzalo, thank you so much for bringing this distinguished group of speakers, and the floor is yours.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, Anna, and good afternoon to you all. My name is Gonzalo Puerto. I'm the head of cultural activities at the Instituto Cervantes in Brussels. And today I have the pleasure of presenting the event Europe is Woven in Silk on behalf of the Cervantes Institute here in Brussels, but in particular its director, Ana Vázquez Barrado, who for reasons of force majeure will not be able to present it herself as she would have wished. Let me start by thanking the European School of Administration and Ana Iturriaga, its head, and Blanca Claramunt, our colleague, who's coordinator of course managers at the ESA, as well as the University of Valencia and our colleagues at the head office of the Institute in Madrid, and of course, to you all for your interest. As you all know, the event today will address the subject Europe is Woven in Silk, a conversation on the international relations, heritage and digital technology. And we'll explore the role of knowledge and about heritage, what the role is and how that it does play a role in the construction of European identity from several points of view. The event is part of the European project SILKNOW, of which the Instituto Cervantes is a partner, having developed activities in cities as Warsaw, Manchester, Palermo, now Brussels. And as a matter of fact, the last event in the project will be that on the 7th of July, entitled Sustainable Fashion, no longer just another option. And once again, it will be co-organized with the ESA. As to speakers in this roundtable, they all have valuable insights into the continuing relevance of silk as a beacon for the worldwide relations. But it will be my colleague Philippe Robertet who will present and moderate the event, who will introduce them to you. In turn, let me say in closing a few words about him. Philippe Robertet Montesinos is Deputy Director of International Relations at the Instituto Cervantes. Born in 1961 in Paris, France, he's both Spanish and he has both Spanish and French nationalities. He graduated in economics, his specialty being international economy and economy development from Universidad Complutense in Madrid, Spain. He joined the Instituto Cervantes in February 1992, just a few months after its creation, and has developed a fruitful career ever since. At present, he is, as already mentioned, Deputy Director of International Relations and Cultural Diplomacy, and as such, he is in charge of, among other things, planning the activities of our organization abroad, especially building bridges and relations with the strategic partners. So, please, Philippe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Blanca, Ana, Gonzalo, for your presentation and for your kind words. Thank you to all the audience for being there and for your interest. The title of this roundtable is A Conversation on International Relation, Heritage and Digital Technology. The conversation we have planned takes place between three actors with very different backgrounds: a diplomat, an engineer, and a project officer. And they will bring different but complementary vision and angles that will enrich the debate. We will start with a short speech of no more than 10 minutes by every speaker, followed by a number of questions to try to deepen in some aspect and to start a conversation with different vision and angles. We will leave time enough at the end for the audience to make any questions. Please use the chat for it. Let me introduce now the brilliant speakers we have today. I'm sure you will enjoy very much this roundtable. Rafael Soriano, he graduated in law and a career diplomat since 1991. Prior to joining the Instituto Cervantes as Director of International Relations, he was a senior advisor to the Secretary of State for International Cooperation and for Iberoamerica and the Caribbean. Previously, he has served as Deputy Head of Mission to the Spanish embassies in Dublin, Copenhagen, and Sofia. He was Cultural Counselor to the Embassy in Tunisia and Consul General of Spain in Cordoba, Argentina. He has also worked as Deputy Director General for cooperation with South American countries at the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation, AECID. Cristina Portalés is a senior researcher in computer science from Universidad de Valencia. She is a Ramón y Cajal postdoc fellow at the Institute of Robotics and Information and Communication Technology at Universidad de Valencia in Spain, where she currently works as full PhD senior researcher, being the technical manager of the Horizon 2020 SILKNOW project. She is also professor of data visualization at the School of Engineering at the same University. She had formerly graduated with a double degree, engineer in geodesy and cartography from the Universidad Politécnica de Valencia, Spain, and MSc in surveying and geoinformation from the Technische Universität in Vienna, Austria. She was a research fellow at the Institute of Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing in Vienna, and PhD research fellow at Mixed Reality Laboratory of the University of Nottingham, UK, and the Interaction and Entertainment Research Center of Nanyang University of Singapore. She carried out her PhD at the Fine Arts School of Universidad Politécnica de Valencia, o Universidad Politécnica de Valencia, Universidad del País Valenciano, no lo sé, with the title Augmented Reality Multimedia Environments in the Arts Field, which received an outstanding award by the UPV. First woman receiving the E.H. Thompson Award, given by the Remote Sensing and Photogrammetry Society. author of more than 80 scientific publications, S&T Program Committee of diverse international conferences. She is deputy editor of the scientific journal Multimodal Technology and Interaction. Her research interests are focused on computer vision, augmented reality, and digital cultural heritage. And finally, Rodrigo Martín, Project Officer, Research Executive Agency at European Commission. He was born in Madrid. He studied archaeology in the Universidad Autónoma of that city. He participated in several research projects in the field of archaeology. He made his PhD thesis on the Hellenistic period in northern Mesopotamia. During 15 years, he was the director of the Spanish team in the European archaeological project of Tel Beidar at Syria. He spent long periods in that country, and during 1 year, he taught methodology of archaeology in Damascus University. And now he's working in the European Research Executive Agency, managing projects on cultural heritage. And then, Rafael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Philippe, for your kind presentation, and warm greetings to all of you from Instituto Cervantes in Madrid. I am delighted to join this conversation, this roundtable on international relations, heritage, and digital technology. Many thanks to the organizers for their kind invitation to be part of this event. As you well know, SILKNOW is a research project funded by Horizon 2020 that aims to improve the understanding, conservation, and dissemination of European silk heritage. It applies new technologies to the understanding of the past. It produces digital models of weaving techniques, and it develops an open access multilingual Thesaurus. It is a project that embodies Europe at its best. It brings together European partners, public and private, from different countries. It helps us to understand the past with a view to build a better future. It applies modern technologies around a dialogue concerning culture, silk, and relations between East and West. Instituto Cervantes is proud to be a partner in the project. As you all know, Instituto Cervantes serves as the flagship of Spain's cultural diplomacy. During our 30 years of existence, we have managed to develop a network of 86 centers in 45 countries across all continents. Our goals are the promotion of the teaching of the Spanish language and the dissemination of Spanish culture worldwide. Our main contribution to SILKNOW is precisely the dissemination of the results of the project, both at the academic and at the cultural level. Taking part in European projects and teaming up with European and local partners is one of the priorities of Instituto Cervantes in the years to come. My introductory remarks today will focus on how we understand cultural diplomacy and how we interact with local partners and international allies. In times when diplomatic practices are often labeled as soft, hard, green, or digital, there is a growing interest in cultural diplomacy. But how do we understand it? Is it just another label for soft power, or something bigger and wider? Is it just about the image of a country abroad, or is it about something else? Are cultural diplomacy and the promotion of international cultural relations the same? Do they pursue the same goals? Cultural diplomacy is certainly part of what we call a public diplomacy. Public diplomacy seeks to build bridges of understanding with new audiences, and cultural diplomacy would do that by promoting language and culture. It is only when we narrow those efforts to an exercise of showcasing when some voices protest. In that sense, international cultural relations would take us a step further, where national interests step down to higher beats. Then the promotion of international cultural relations would be seen as an effort to connect people transcending national borders for the sake of dialogue and global solidarity. In my view, we are speaking about the two sides of the same coin. Let me tell you how we combine them in our daily work. When promoting the teaching of the Spanish language, one of our best assets abroad, we do it in close partnership with the rest of the members of the Spanish-speaking community. We never forget that as of today, Spaniards represent just 8% of the Spanish speakers in the world. We see Spanish language as a shared heritage of the Spanish-speaking community. As the director of Instituto Cervantes always points out, learning a language is not only about a grammar book and a dictionary. It must be seen as a bridge for dialogue and the promotion of values. We want our students worldwide to see our language closely linked to the defense of democratic values, gender equality, or the environment. The same thing applies to our cultural activities. Of course, we want to present the work of our writers, artists, and scientists to the world. But the key issue is how we do it. We focus on intercultural dialogue, co-creation, and the exchange of experiences. It's not just about us, but also about the other. We believe that, with that intention in mind, we can reconcile the notions of cultural diplomacy and international cultural relations. Let me give you some examples. Our language courses, teacher training, and the certification of language skills are defined by a pan-Hispanic approach. Just a few weeks ago, in a field trip to Lebanon, it came to us not as a surprise to see that most of the teachers of our center were from Latin America. Is that a problem? Because they learn Spanish with a different accent, sometimes with different expressions and words? Not at all. It is a richness. It is quite revealing also that very recently we signed an agreement with the British Council. The arrangement highlights not what divides us, but what unites us. English and Spanish are two global languages, but not necessarily competing against each other. The pursuit of multilingual societies is a shared goal and an antidote to the temptation to build closed societies. Just yesterday, we inaugurated an extension of the Instituto Cervantes in the US border town of El Paso in Texas. Our target there is not actually to teach Spanish, but also to show the richness of bilingual societies. More than 50% of our cultural program is carried out with the participation of partners from the Spanish-speaking community. A Peruvian writer, a Mexican artist, or a Colombian musician are not just welcome, but part of the DNA of the cultural program of our centers. Not to mention the importance of opening our spaces to local partners and engaging our work with a view to strengthen understanding and collaboration. Let me give you another very concrete example that shows this commitment, an example that, as it is the case with SILKNOW, also builds bridges between East and West. In the early 20th century, when China was opening to the world, a Chinese man of letters, his name was Lin Shu, became aware of the work of Cervantes and his immortal creation, Don Quixote. Lin Shu was responsible for the first translation into Chinese of Don Quixote. The incredible part of the story is that he only spoke Chinese and carried out his work, helped by a friend who had read an English translation. The result was a sort of Chinese recreation of Don Quixote, with many alterations and diversion from the original book. Published as the story of the Enchanted Knight, the book changes the image of Don Quixote, less deluded and more learned, and that of Sancho Panza, who becomes more a disciple of a culture master than a squire to a mad knight. A century after the release of this Chinese Don Quixote, a Spanish professor of classical Chinese, with the support, among other institutions, of Instituto Cervantes, has embarked on the project of returning the favor to Lin Shu. Last April, we launched Lin's translation into Spanish in an incredible journey back from China. Don Quixote traveled east in 1922. It was adapted to Chinese culture, and almost 100 years later, traveled west so we could also know how Lin Shu understood our culture. I think this is a good example of how important it is not just how we see others, but how others see us. The gaze of the other and the change of perceptions should be a critical component of cultural diplomacy. This perspective runs in parallel with Instituto Cervantes' active participation in international cultural diplomacy networks, such as UNIC, the network of European Union National Institutes for Culture. With 38 members and 132 clusters in 102 countries, UNIC is an exceptional platform to promote the importance of international cultural relations as a key element in EU external action. Just 2 weeks ago, UNIC and the EEAS adopted a joint declaration in that sense. It was also during the months of lockdown in 2020 that we succeeded with Latin American partners in launching a new cultural diplomacy network by the name of CANOA. With this platform, a sort of pan-Hispanic UNIC, we seek to develop joint actions to favor the internationalization of culture in Spanish in non-Spanish speaking countries. I'm coming to an end of this introductory remarks by firmly advocating for a public commitment in favor of the cultural sector. In June 2020, UNIC adopted a statement, "Make cultural relations count in a post-crisis global society," that wanted to make the case before national administrations and EU institutions on the critical importance to include culture as part of our efforts to tackle the crisis and adapt to the post-COVID challenges. These efforts will certainly need new financial resources. Culture defines us as human beings. Active participation in cultural life, be it by reading a book, going to the theater, or listening to music, has a decisive and positive impact on our health and well-being. COVID-19 has reminded us that in a very dramatic way, but it has also shown that culture is an economic sector that provides jobs and favors competitiveness. It is, last but not least, something that is at the heart of the European project and that is fundamental in building a more resilient and interconnected world. Cultural diplomacy and international cultural relations are crucial to the construction of spaces for peaceful coexistence and cooperation. I will leave it there, and later on, I will be more than glad to take on your comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rafael. We will come back to you in a while. Now, Cristina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, also Philip, for your kind presentation. And I also would like to thank you to the organization of this event for giving us the opportunity to share the result of our project with this incredible community. So let me share my screen, just a second. Okay. Okay, so I would like to briefly introduce you our project and show some results. So first of all, why silk and why now? Well, silk is when people think about silk, they think about our ancient kings and aristocrats, but the truth is that silk is a living heritage today in the 21st century at the European level. It is alive in our traditions and also in modern life. And it's not only about the objects themselves, the material things, they are so good looking and valuable, but it's also related to the immaterial heritage. So this immaterial heritage that lives in artisans, how these fabrics were produced, what were the decisions that the artisans took in order to produce these beautiful objects. So, and silk heritage, the truth is that also related to technology from the very beginning. In fact, the perforated cards that were invented for jacquard looms, they were the same technology was used afterwards in the first computers. So there's a strong relationship between this heritage and the technology. And also, when we talk about silk heritage, we tend to think about the Silk Road. So China, the Far East, etc. But most people don't know that the Silk Road connecting East and West from ancient to medieval times was later replaced by a network of cities and routes within Europe. And they were very active in the production of trade of silk. But the truth is that this heritage is fragile and it is at the risk of disappearing. Even in a center as important for silk such as Lyon, this heritage has been under serious threat in the past. So besides, this heritage has been well studied by scholars, yet most Europeans remain unaware of it. Traditional crafts related to it have almost disappeared. All artisans find no replacement among young generations. So, but however, there is also growing interest in costume and fashion as both a cultural phenomenon and creative industries. And well, in our project, we like to say that Europe is woven in silk. No, European history is woven in silk. And the truth is that, yeah, we can find a lot of examples in fashion and textile, which are at the heart of the creative economy, generating wealth and preserving our identity, and thus connecting our identities as European citizens as well. But, oh, sorry. Who is SILKNOW? Well, we are a consortium of 9 partners from different countries, and we are quite diverse because we are composed of universities, research centers. Just a second. Okay, universities, research centers, SMEs, and one cultural institute, which is Instituto Cervantes, which has a worldwide representation. And the coordination team is composed, the University of Valencia coordinates this project, but it's composed of 2 teams. One is the Institute of Robotics and ICT, and the other is the Faculty of Geography and History. So as you can see, we have a diverse background, and we are working in an interdisciplinary way in this project. Oh, I think I just, sorry, I think I stopped sharing my screen.
Yes, you did.
Yes, you did.
Oh, no, my God, how did I just pressed the next button. Just a second. Let's see what happens. Okay, try again.
Okay, we can see it now.
Okay, sorry for this. I don't know what I did. Oh yeah. Okay, so you can see here some nice pictures of the people working in our consortium of the different partners. And of course, we also collaborate with other museums and institutions that provide the digital collections from their catalogs, so we can use them in our project. And we also collaborate, yes, so these are some pictures of some meetings we had with other people from other institutions, and we are also in contact with other projects. So our idea is that we can reach wider audiences with collaborating with other projects. And here are some very nice pictures of our collaborations as well. So what are we doing in the project? So basically what we are doing is connecting digital collections and trying to get added value from these collections by means of the technology. So we have three general objectives, which is advancing, searching, and semantically relating digitized European silk textile heritage. We are also building a virtual loom that I will show you in brief. And all of this for the improvement of the understanding of the European silk heritage. So and here is just a summary of the tools we have developed in the project and some nice results we have. And I'm going to show you one by one, but very briefly, because I have not too much time for this presentation. But first of all, we have developed Silk Heritage Thesaurus, which is a specialized vocabulary of silk heritage, and it is also multilingual. It is in Spanish, in Italian, in French, and in English. We have also developed educational materials in order to better explain what is the Silk Road and the silk heritage. And we have also Ada Silk, which is an exploratory search engine. When we have there, all of these collections are connected, and people can look for specific objects, they can filter, and they can create lists and share this list of objects through social networks. And they can also see these objects in a kind of spatiotemporal maps where they can further do other filtering. They can visualize the objects according to the temporal scale, not only geographical, but also temporal. They can also inspect the relationships of the objects for a given object with other objects has the same technique, the same material. They were produced in the same period of time. They are cataloged in the same category. So in this way, what we are trying to do with these maps is to help users finding relationships among different objects. So the technology is aiding people to quickly find these relationships. And we have this virtual loom, which is intended to reproduce 3D model or to produce 3D models from designs based on traditional weaving techniques. So this system only needs an image as an input, then the user can select which part of this image wants to reproduce in 3D or to select all the image. This is also possible, of course. Then user can select which traditional technique he wants to apply and the number of colors he or she wants to use for the 3D model. There are also the options to select the width and also to change the color. So let's say there's quite a lot of flexibility in order to, from a given design, to modify this design and produce different 3D models based on a single design. And finally, you have the 3D model, which is weaved according to the settings you have asked for the system. And then you can inspect this model, zoom in, zoom out, rotate the model, and also activate, deactivate some layers. In this sense, users can better understand how this technique is working. So it's a way of trying to transfer this knowledge to wide audiences, because these 3D models are quite easy to understand. It's like looking into the fabrics. It's like, yes, you have a microscope, but also you can touch these fabrics without damaging the original objects that they are fragile per se. And of course, we can also print this. The virtual loom allows users to export the 3D models in a way that 3D printers can't just print them. So we can also produce printouts of the 3D models. And regarding to the 3D printing technology, I will also like to mention a collaboration we have with a designer, a Polish designer, which is named Patrick Wojciechowski. And he has worked together with Monkeyfab, one of our partners, and also with the University of Valencia. And what he has done is departing from traditional designs and silk textiles. He has created new designs, and we have, or Monkeyfab has printed these designs, and we have showcased them in a fashion event. So here I put you our YouTube channel from the SILKNOW project, when you can see the results of this event, and also you can see other videos of our project, because the truth, we've been quite active in disseminating our results through audiovisual materials. And this only some screenshots from this event, and these very nice designs that have been produced with the 3D printers. And here, to finalize my presentation, is just the link to our webpage. And also, I'd like to tell you that we are quite active in social media. So I invite all the people to join our social media and to follow us. So I think that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cristina. Awesome presentation. Thank you very much. And now, Rodrigo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello. Well, as the project officer in the Research Executive Agency of the project SILKNOW, I'm going to explain a little bit the background against which this project was selected, which were the objectives and the policies behind the selection of this project. As you know, it has succeeded a very competitive call for proposals of Horizon 2020. For those of you who are not part of the research family, I will tell you that Horizon 2020 is the framework program for research and innovation that ended last year. And now we are in the new one, which is Horizon Europe. So it succeeded in a call 3 years ago called European Cultural Heritage, Access and Analysis for a Richer Interpretation of the Past. The philosophy behind this call was that there is a wealth of digital text, images, audiovisual content, and 3D presentations of objects, as well as other information in collections of archives, museums, and cultural heritage sites. These are largely inaccessible for both computers and humans. Humans can easily extract meaning from individual digital assets, but are quickly overwhelmed by the number of items, which are usually spatially and temporarily disconnected and of different digital quality. New technologies can be a valuable instrument to process large amounts of data in order to identify new correlations and interpretations and extract new meaning from our cultural and intellectual heritage. Advance in this field can present a major step forward in digital humanities and other science related to European heritage, memory, identity, and cultural interaction. In addition, the increased and growing complexity of digital cultural material raises new challenge as regards its preservation over time, which is an essential condition for use and reuse of these collections. So the call for proposals in which SILKNOW succeeded was looking for projects that would help to better understand and inform the present by richer interpretation of the past. For this, they should create affordable and efficient digital access, documentary methods, analysis, and preservation services for cultural resources. The call for proposals was looking for actions that should develop innovative tools and methods to extract meaning from digital artifacts, considering the quality of the digital content in order to allow the study and preservation of European heritage. The work should fundamentally address the issue of data and quality of this data and interoperability of this data. The work had to be performed in close cooperation with humanities and social science researchers. So when this call was launched, among the expected impact that was sought by the call was to find new ways of taking into account the state of the art in computer science and big data management, of searching European digital content which used to be inaccessible, buried among huge amounts of data, and not sufficiently tagged with adequate metadata. It was also expected to improve the understanding of the rich diversity of European cultural heritage and create added value for the society by providing humanities researchers, journalists, policymakers, and the interested public in general with new ways of finding answers to their questions about the European cultural heritage and history. Now, we have just seen with Cristina the results that they are getting that are achieving the big part of the requirements of the call where they were presented. So they are accomplishing part of the policy objectives that were presented for projects. And well, this they are almost at the end of the projects, and I want to congratulate them for having arrived where they have arrived, and they are doing one now here with this event, one of the obligations of Horizon 2020 projects, which is the dissemination of the results of their projects. So that's what we are doing here now. Thank you. That's done for my part.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Well, as you have seen, three visions, different but complementary. The three of them very interesting indeed. There is a question I would like to ask both to Cristina and Rodrigo. What is the role of technology in the protection of cultural heritage? And what are the advantages of interdisciplinarity? Cristina, as an engineer, could you tell us your vision?
Yes. So, although I'm an engineer, I have to say that I have collaborated quite a lot with projects related to cultural heritage, and always from the side of the technology. So what I see that cultural heritage could benefit especially from the accessibility point of view. So on the one side, these technologies provide professionals with the tools that make heritage accessible, such as 3D representations, big databases, artificial intelligence technology, but not only for professionals, but only to the general audiences, because there are other interactive technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, also semantic webs, geolocation, that makes people, it makes it easier for wider audiences to reach those objects related to our cultural heritage. And also, computers make it possible to process lots of data in very short periods of time, in milliseconds. So this really helps the professionals to study digitized heritage in another dimension compared to traditional means, such as books or even such as audiovisual materials, because we have also today this interaction that allows users to really look for the things that they want in very short periods of time. And also, as I have presented the spatiotemporal maps and the other Silk web search engine, this allows the technology to find these correlations between the collections that if a person didn't have this technology, it would be very difficult to have a holistic idea of everything and to find this connection. So it will require much more time. So yeah, so I think that this is in summary what I think it is important, the technology. And also regarding the interdisciplinary work, because of the technology, you need experts that are able to use the technology. But the technology has to serve for something. It's not, okay, I can do a lot of things with a computer, but these things have to be useful for the people that is going to use this technology. So I think it is really relevant, this dialogue between the different disciplines. And not only for that, I think that working in an interdisciplinary way, it really brings added value compared to what the different disciplines could do in an isolated way. So it's like you have a problem, you have an issue to solve, and you see this issue, this problem from different perspectives. So at the end, you can think of a solution that it's greater, that it's considering again the whole. So it's not only looking to the problem from a specific perspective. Of course, it is important that we have experts in different areas of knowledge, but I think that working in an isolated way, it's risky because today, well, the technology is there. And I think to take benefit from this technology, it is necessary that apart from people has expertise in certain area, they are able to communicate this expertise and to work together with other experts. And I think in the project SILKNOW, this is one of the strengths of the project, because it's not only that from the coordination team, we are already two different teams which are very different. Also, our partners have different profiles. And from the managerial point of view in the project, we have two technical managers, one more expert in ICT, that it's me, one more expert in social sciences and humanities, which is Jorge Sebastian. But both of us have previous experience, me collaborating in projects related to cultural heritage and Jorge collaborating in technological projects. So I think this enriches the project very much. And I think I'm very proud of the interdisciplinary work that we are carrying out in the project.
Thank you, Cristina. Rodrigo, are there many European projects combining heritage and technology?
Well, many. Proportionally, yes, many. We all would like to have more European projects working on heritage, but we have the ones that the budget allows to have in each call. It's a very competitive call, and all calls only there are very few of those who can succeed. So that's why we always have to congratulate a project that has succeeded in this very competitive. Now I have to say that in Horizon 2020, the digital part of the call of the portfolio of cultural heritage has been designed by DigiConnect. So in DigiConnect, you know, they were in charge of the digital agenda. So there has been a series of calls for proposals on digital elements in Horizon 2020. There will be some calls also in Horizon Europe. But what is interesting to see is that in the other calls that are created by DGRTD, digital aspects are more and more important. Okay, we have all the projects with digital, and it has to be also with the previous question also that I saw also that you said that was also a question also for me. Well, what's the role of IT in cultural heritage? Huge. We can be talking for hours and hours and hours. I would say 3 main points. First, knowledge of the heritage. Now with the digital, the research can get a lot more knowledge on any aspect of research, even if you are studying Roman pottery, a medieval cathedral, whatever you're studying with the IT technologies, you have a lot more of knowledge that make advance the knowledge of history and the heritage. This also, it's important, having a knowledge for the preservation of the history, because you get information when you know better a monument, you can better protect it and you can better preserve it. Also, IT tools give you the possibility to create risk charts that tells you which is the level of risk of every monument. For example, there are tools that are useful for fight against illicit traffic of antiquities. That is a big deal now. And finally, what Cristina said about dissemination of cultural heritage during the pandemic, we have seen that a lot of projects, even our projects, have developed ways of disseminating their results through digital tools. Now, during the pandemic, all museums, many museums open their collections to visitors through IT tools. And also researchers in our projects had to develop ways of doing research remotely through the new IT tools. And so now, after the pandemic, we have learned for things that are so important for European economy, like cultural tourism, that there can be hybrid approach to the cultural heritage through physical visits and also through the new IT possibilities.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Rodrigo has mentioned the pandemic and the results, the positive results of this pandemic. I would like to ask Rafael about the impact of the COVID crisis on the activities and strategies of Instituto Cervantes. What have we learned? Has Instituto Cervantes has taken any opportunity or advantage from the crisis for promoting culture and language?
Well, thank you, Philippe. It's difficult to speak about positive consequences of COVID-19. Let's put it this way: we have to take advantage of the opportunities that the crisis has brought. And to begin with, I would say that the outbreak of the pandemics, as it was the case with many institutions, we were forced to put an end to all our face-to-face activities at a global scale. And at that time, especially during 2020, during the first semester of 2020, our main concern was to keep our activities going, not to say that we had closed. So in very complex circumstances and in a record time, we move our face-to-face courses to online courses, and we turn all our cultural program into digital content. For instance, when we look at what we have done during the past year, as far as SILKNOW is concerned, we never stopped. We took a full advantage of the digital dimension to keep working with all the partners involved in the project and to produce the products, the virtual room and many others, that Instituto Cervantes has been in charge of disseminating and presenting in our global network of centers. In the case of Instituto Cervantes, and as it has been the case in many of our sister organizations, especially in the European Union, we must not forget the financial impact of the crisis. That's something very important that I would like to highlight, as at least 50% of the budget of the Instituto depends on the revenue that we get from our activities. So it was a very harsh impact, and we are still trying to recover from it. But you mentioned, what are the lessons that we have learned during this process that could benefit our action in the future? I would mention a few. The first of them would be a digital revolution, a digital transformation, not because this digital transition is something new, but it is the acceleration of the change which was unexpected. And in other circumstances, without the pandemics, it would have taken maybe years to adapt to the new system. And that is something that we have done in a few months. And I think we have been very resilient in adapting this question of the digital transformation to our daily work. And it has been also very clear that despite the existence, at least at the Instituto Cervantes, of certain digital platforms to keep working also from the cultural and academic point of view, that we needed a better training in digital skills, both for our teachers and our students. And also we needed to revise the digital contents that we use in this digital network. So the continuous and training for digital skills is something that is still business on progress, and that we hope to address in the coming months. Another important issue that has to do with something that Rodrigo mentioned earlier on is that in the case of Instituto Cervantes, being an agent of cultural diplomacy, we need to be on the ground. I mean, the digital sphere is something we have to take advantage of. That's no doubt about it, but we need to be on the ground, because when you do cultural diplomacy, you need these face-to-face encounters. You need to foster mobility, co-creations, exchange of experiences. And that can only be done if you do it on the ground. So we will have to strike the right balance between these digital highways and the necessity to have a presence on the ground through these models of hybrid formats that we still have to define. And last but not least, I would like to mention as another lesson learned that although they already existed, that the pandemics has shown how important it is, this network of collaboration with different partners. And there, the digital sphere is a key element that have allowed us to feel interconnected, even at the time when all borders were closed, where mobility was so limited. So we have to take advantage even further of these possibilities. And that's why I said at the very beginning that this project of SILKNOW is a good example of how we can mix different partners from different countries, local and public and private institutions, in something that, building from the past, help us to prepare for a better future.
Thank you, Rafael. We are running out of time, but I would like to ask a few questions, a couple of questions. Cristina, in the same way, how has the COVID crisis impacted the project? Did you have to change it all the way around, or how did you adapt?
Yes. So we haven't had a huge impact. Of course, we have to modify some things. For instance, the meetings we have with all the consortium from time to time is each 6 months. We have to shift them to be online instead of traveling here and there. It's always good also to meet people, and maybe the technology in this sense puts a little bit of barrier because you can't touch the person. But of course, in a crisis such as this pandemic, the technology has saved us in this sense. So we haven't noticed huge impact in the project because we have been able to take advantage from the technology in order to reschedule things and to change methodologies. And for instance, instead of an event with a lot of people, we do this event with a lot of social networks, and so this is disseminated in another way. So we've been able to do that. And also we have to take in consideration that a project of these dimensions, apart from the pandemic, it already involves a lot of technology for the communication between partners. So in a certain way, we already were like that before the pandemic. It's just we had to do little adjustment in specific events and meetings and so on. But the truth is that we haven't noticed a huge impact in our case.
I can't help but ask Rodrigo about his point of view and the experience about cultural heritage protection as an archaeologist. So Rodrigo, sorry.
Every question you ask are a big field. We can have a whole scientific congress about that, how to say in 2 minutes.
That's why it's my last question.
Okay. I will try to heritage protection. Well, heritage protection. Heritage is a fragile good. It's a wealth that can contribute to sustainable development, but it's very fragile. Once it has disappeared, it disappears. Sometimes you can have the good luck, as Cristina was saying, of having the intangible knowledge that can help a little bit. So, because when the destruction of the roof of Notre Dame, the intangible knowledge of how to build and the know-how that has been used in the Middle Ages in France with a very good policy of preservation of tangible and intangible knowledge, it has been preserved. That's the reason why it is perfectly possible to use the same techniques that were used in the medieval times. And because some people are saying, they are going to do Disneyland. I am sorry, I didn't know that Disneyland has been made with scientific approach. No. The way they are going to restore Notre Dame is using this know-how of intangible heritage that has been preserved through centuries. So it's very important to preserve tangible, that once it disappears, and intangible, that intangible, as they are doing in SILKNOW. If the silk wealth of Europe disappeared, we have everything that SILKNOW is doing that can help us to preserve at least the know-how. Okay, so the protection is different in many member states of the European Union, but if we see places where it has been preserved, like for instance, Paris. Paris is the city of the world getting the major number of tourists. So it pays back, it's wealthy. How many times Paris is tagged as the most beautiful city of the world? Why? Because they have preserved their cultural heritage. Rome and many Italian cities, Florence, is the same thing. So preserving the cultural heritage is kind of a brand for a city. Because there is something that is, cultural heritage is threatened by a lot of threats. For instance, real estate. Real estate is like, okay, let's preserve only 2 houses and let's do the rest of them modern. Or let's destroy the inside of the house and then let's keep only the facade. And you go, it's something modern. That is really like Disneyland. So you see cities like Rome, Florence, Paris, many French cities, Avila in Spain. People going to Avila, they are going to see cultural heritage. They are going also to have some culinary experience also, but mainly who would visit Avila if it was not because of the cultural heritage? So it really pays back, preserving it. It's really something that pays back, and it's a very, very, very fragile heritage. Also, we have destruction of cultural heritage outside Europe. So we know what I've been working in Syria for many years, so I know I'm following a little bit the destruction of the heritage. And also there, technology can be useful. For instance, the Temple of Bel, the Temple of Baal Shamin, and some others of the monuments destroyed in Syria, they are using high technologies in order to see a little bit how they can reconstruct, but there were not so much documentation as we have in France. So it is a little bit more difficult. And also, as I said before, preservation of cultural heritage is interconnected also, because the destruction in other parts of the world brings about the illicit traffic of antiquities coming to Europe. So we are at the end of a network of traffic for antiquities in which we can foster it or we can prevent it. We can prevent it from the policy point of view, or we can also prevent it through technology solutions. I have been also project officer of a very good project called Nature, which are working on the against illicit traffic of antiquities, and they have developed a methodology of cooperation between archaeologists and police and Interpol that I have developed some protocols that are going to be an example also for how to a good practice of how to deal with it. So yeah, there is a huge deal of possibilities. I have tried to pinpoint a few, but the possibilities, not only the possibilities, but the needs of cultural heritage and the needs of the preservation of cultural, I would just say it's something that brings a lot of richness. Look at Paris, look at Florence, look at Rome, look at Avila, and that can be destroyed very, very easily. So we need to protect it.
I would tend to think that preserving cultural heritage, it's easier in cities like Paris or Rome, rather than in Syria before the the war or in Tunisia. But is it the case? Is it really easier to preserve these cultural heritage in such big cities just because they are richer, or?
We need political will. That's all we need. I was working in Syria many years. The last time I was in Syria, I was participating in 2010 in a UNESCO mission that were demanded by the Syrian authorities. In order to do we went all over Syria. We made a study of all the sites in Syria. And I had been working in Syria many years, but that mission was the last time I could be in Syria. We were all over looking all the policies that the General Department of Antiquities and Museums of Syria was doing in order to preserve the heritage. And I was amazed of the big effort that they were putting in preserving, and not only to preserve the site, but to do a buffer zone between the ancient part of the cities and the modern part of the cities, something that is not done sometimes. We have some examples in Europe that I'm not going to mention. I would not be politically correct. But there are some places in Europe where you keep the monument and you destroy it around. And then, well, you are destroyed, you are losing. In Syria, they were working into that, but then the war came. Because they had realized that the neighbor Egypt is getting a lot of income from the cultural tourism. So they had the potential also to bring it also to Syria. There is that potential. So it's political will, and also the capacity that the citizens, the will of the citizens, not to allow the destruction of the heritage and to fight for the preservation of heritage. Because if the citizens don't care about the destruction of a cinema from the 20s to put commercial centers inside, okay, then if the citizens don't want, then we lost the battle. But if the citizens ask for the authorities preservation of cultural heritage, that's very important also.
Okay, thank you, Rodrigo. Anna, do I have time for one more question, or?
We have a lot of time. We have a few questions from colleagues. So thank you very much for all the very excellent presentations and moderation that we have already heard. So I will now just put forward some of the questions that we're getting. So first of all, I think I have a question to Cristina asking, could you specify which software is being used for your dictionary?
Okay, so for the dictionary, we are using Cosmos, which is a platform that provides to have access to link data to these vocabularies. So, and you can have access, I can share the link to our Thesaurus. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And are there copyright issues when combining the different DBs that are being used? I guess not, as it is being carried out under an open science model.
Of course, yes, we are following the open science model. All the results from SILKNOW are open. For instance, all the software that we have developed is in GitHub, and all the papers we are producing are in open access publications. And for the catalogs we have also in AdaSilk, we have asked for specific permission to the different institutions, and we have been aggregated them into AdaSilk as long as we have had such permission. So the truth is all the results that have been produced, also the educational materials, are in open access, and they can be reached from our project website.
Mm-hmm. And I have here a comment, and that perhaps you would like to comment on too. He says, I would like to underline Christina's comment that collecting and storing data is not an issue today, given the IT tools available. More key is channel the interdisciplinary profiles of people to transform data and information into knowledge, from here into know-how, and from here into action.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And also, it's not easy at the beginning. So when people from these different disciplines join together and try to understand each other, at first it's not easy. For instance, for the preparation of the proposal, when we met the two teams at the University of Valencia, we were doing meetings every week just to understand each other, to see what were the needs of the people from the cultural side, and to see what the technology could offer to them. And we had a lot of conversations before we could start writing the proposal. So the truth is that I think it's a key point to understand each other, to have our ears open. It's not just I have my idea and this is like it. No, I'm going to listen what others are saying, and I'm going to explain my point of view for the other people trying to communicate, so in a language that everybody can understand. And that it's not always easy, and there's a lot of people, I think, that need to understand that. So in that way, the results can be really the result of our interdisciplinary work. It's a co-creation. It's not like I do my part, the other partner, I do my part, the other partner, I do my part, and then we put all the parts together. It's not like that. It's like, let's think about what is the problem, what are the solutions, let's think about it, discuss, change our minds again, and then produce the things. And then we have these nice results.
What did you find was the most difficult thing to bridge between the disciplines? I mean, was there some really blocking issue that was surprising you? What was the main problem or barrier to communication between the different disciplines? Okay, so the truth is that as I have a quite interdisciplinary profile, in my point, from my perspective, myself, I don't think I have such big issues, but I have observed that people that is not used to collaborate with other disciplines, at the beginning, there is like, this person is saying that which is not true. No, it's not the fact that it's not true, is that they use another language to express maybe the same thing. They have different vocabulary. They name different to things. And that is why you need an open mind to really listen to their person. And from the academic point of view, the two different teams of the university, we are so much different. We have different objectives. So for instance, regarding to journals and publications, they want to go to a specific conference and we want to go to others. So at the end, we have to find these connections again for these more multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary venues where we can present our results together. So maybe from the academic point of view, that would be the case. But I myself really like this kind of work. So I really enjoy this experience. And I think we have more experiences like this, of course. And was there any moment where you said, okay, that's it, we cannot come to an agreement, or we cannot come to a common understanding? Was there any moment like that during the project? No. There were some moments that were difficult, maybe not from the interdisciplinary point of view, but maybe for regarding to way of working of persons, or I don't know, of different interests, like the one I mentioned from the conferences. But at the end, we always arrive to an agreement. So if, for instance, we can choose between the two different options, and one option is more beneficial for one partner, or then the next time we choose the next option, something like that. So at the end, I think it's also, we have to take in consideration that we are all human beings and we can arrive to such agreements. And at the end is looking for, if a partner or a person just say, no, I don't like this, or just trying to understand what are the problems and trying to find a solution. Maybe the solution is not perfect, but I think there's always a solution. So I think we manage quite well this situation in the project. Yeah, a colleague in the chat is saying that indeed, Cristina, he agrees with you. It's about getting a common mindset to work together. And that way to speak different languages, but if you have the same mindset, you can come to some sort of collaboration. I have another question here. It's for anybody in the panel. Somebody's asking, our identity as Europeans is intertwined with those of many other world cultures. Some see this global landscape as a competition for attention and also for leadership. In your opinion, where lies the best opportunities for European countries and citizens to have a key role in the global scene? What kind of roles should cultural heritage play in this regard? So what is the role of cultural heritage and the opportunities for the European countries in that regard? Anybody who would like to answer?
I would like to answer by an example only. I have been working for many years in research project in Syria with European people from different member states and Syrian archaeologists working together. I was there in September 11th, 2001. And I remember there was like clash of civilizations, etc., etc. The solidarity between Syrians and Europeans that day and the days after was incredible. So working together, and we went, I mean, we didn't have TV on the house of the excavation, we didn't know. So we went to the houses of the village to see the news of the world, and the way we were welcomed by the village that would understand how we were worried was that's a very beautiful exercise of when everybody was talking about clash of civilizations in the small Mesopotamian village of Tel Beidar, it was the opposite, because two groups of scientists working on cultural heritage, Arabs and European, were working together. It's just an example.
Yes, Rafael, please.
Yes, and I think that we as Europeans, we see culture as part of our identity, and that's one of the reasons why we have this awareness about how important it is to keep our heritage alive, how important it is to know how this heritage came to us and to preserve it for future generations. And I would say that a very important thing, and that's something that we have been discussing in UNIC for a long time, is to introduce culture as a key element in EU external action, which was not so clear at the very beginning. So the way we Europeans introduce ourselves to the world has to include culture as a key element, not just to define ourselves, but also to build bridges with others. And I would like to draw the attention of the audience to the work done by our sister organization, the Spanish Agency for International Cooperation, when they link development to culture, which seems very obvious to us now, but which was not so clear when they launched the idea. And it is actually by seeing the preservation of heritage, the know-how, the memory of what has happened, and the physical evidence and the preservation for future generations as part of a very complex scenario where we raise awareness with our local partners about how important it is to preserve that knowledge and benefit from that knowledge and heritage, no, material and immaterial. And that link that the Spanish agency did, I think it is very important. For obvious reasons, ours is a different organization and we cannot work on the ground for the preservation of heritage, but we certainly, and we do it in our centers, work for the raising of awareness about how important the preservation of heritage is.
Anybody else from the panel? If not, I go to another question. Rodrigo, you were saying before, it was very interesting, the examples you were giving us from your experience in Syria and how you were working there together with Syrian archaeologists, sorry. So my question is, it can be a little bit controversial, but what would you say to some people that I myself spent some time in Iraq, you know, looking at the old Mesopotamian remains, and almost everything was in European museums, you know. So the controversial question is, if you think that some elements are, or some cultural artifacts are in danger, do you think it's a good idea to take it out of its environment and to take it to some places where they can be saved, or do you think we should try to maintain it in its normal environment? What would be your view as an archaeologist?
In principle, historical archaeological item should be in the place where it was conceived to see, because I was talking before of the buffer area, the environment, and everywhere. But it is true also that in history, some elements has been preserved from wars because they have been moved away. But let's remember, it's not only items being destroyed in the Middle East. We have the excavations in Tel Halaf in Syria, a very important Aramaic place of the Iron Age, made by the Germans at the beginning of the 20th century, that were brought to Berlin. A major site of Syrian archaeology was reconstructed in Berlin, and it was destroyed during the war. So we don't have to think that only for being in Europe they are preserved. How much European heritage was also destroyed during the war? how much European heritage is being destroyed now by real estate speculation, for instance. So the destruction of heritage is all over the world, and the preservation of heritage is also all over the world. And here is something important, that technology has a very, very, very important role here, because if we digitalize not only the heritage, but we get all the information through digital tools of the inner specific characteristics of the cultural heritage items, if they are destroyed, we have all that information that we didn't have before. So we have the intangible heritage, the know-how that Cristina was mentioned, and a very deep study and even reproduction of the items that now new technology is allowed to do it, that in case the original is destroyed, we have exact replicas and we have all the information that we have extracted from that items that have been destroyed.
I may add, Anna, to these remarks, how important it is the fulfillment of the different set of conventions adopted by UNESCO on the preservation of cultural heritage, for tangible and intangible cultural heritage, for underwater cultural heritage. That's another example about how important it is multilateralism in order to protect and preserve this common good.
Because I was thinking, for example, as a spectator, when I went to the Museum of Pergamo in Berlin, you know, and you see the Easter Gate, for example, or the Pergamon lots of temples that have been beautifully preserved, or in the London, you know, in London also the museums there. What is your feeling? Do you think that is the right way to go, or should they be going back to their respective countries?
Well, that's a very difficult question, because on one hand, you have to understand these situations from a historical perspective. And maybe there is not a general solution to all of those claims, but each and everyone has to be dealt specifically. And once we have an international regulation, an international arrangement, it is clear, you know, the set of rules that we have to play with. But when you look at these kind of situations, and in our countries, no, in Spain, in Germany, in the United Kingdom, no, they all have these sort of situations. And I guess that those questions would have to be analyzed case by case.
Rodrigo, any views on that?
The diplomatic has given the opinion from the diplomatic point of view, so I cannot say any more thing. And the opinion from the archaeologist point of view, I said it before.
Okay, so I hear a little, you know, nuance in the two answers. Okay.
Like even from the diplomatic point of view, he said there is no a perfect solution, and I said before that from the archaeological point of view, it's the same thing. You don't have a perfect solution, so it's important to take it case by case and also use technology to protect the heritage.
Okay, so now I have a question that can be answered from the diplomatic point of view, and then from the archaeological point of view, and also from Cristina. So the question would be, you were talking a lot about culture being a bridge and cultural heritage in order to understand each other better. And of course, indeed, that is very much understood. But what happens when culture can become a barrier between different civilizations, you know, and or when there's appropriation of culture, or you know, can you also see that aspect which is not so negative, so positive, and how would you address it?
Certainly, if I may say a word about that, because as I mentioned in my remarks, that's not the way we understand culture. Our centers, the work of this network that we have worldwide, is not just to showcase what we do in Spain, but actually to create open spaces for local partners, for local artists, to put in place schemes for mobility that would allow us to understand each other better. And the example I gave about this journey back from this Chinese Don Quixote to Spain 100 years later, no, moves in that direction. And again, no, we just don't want to make, let's say, a public statement of who we are, but rather to build these common spaces, no, where we have an opportunity for a conversation and a dialogue.
Yeah, barriers of culture is a construct. It's an intellectual construct. So we have to see from the archaeological, historical point of view. I just have to see what happened in the past and what happened in the future. We have had periods of integrism everywhere in the past, and we have had very rich periods in history with interchange of multiculturalism. I will put two examples. I made my PhD on the Hellenistic period. What is the Hellenistic period? It's the period when the Greek culture meets the East, all the Mesopotamian, Egyptian civilization. What is the result? An incredible development of science, an incredible development of culture. You have the Library of Alexandria, the Library of Pergamon, all these centers of cultures that are going to be the core of the Roman culture from the point of view of philosophy, from the point of view of science, and from the point of view of many other elements that they are going to go to Europe through the Middle Ages. You have another point. In the Middle Ages, you have several points where Arabs are cooperating with Christians in Toledo and in the kingdom of Sicily, where there are exchanges. What happens in that point? In that point, the Arab preservation of ancient science is going to go through Europe. Aristotle is going to go through Europe and going into the universities thanks to those translations made by Arabs of Greek science preserved by the Greeks. And then that without that contact, we are not going to understand the big development of philosophy and of science in Europe at the end of the Middle Ages and during the Renaissance, that is going to open the scientific revolution of the 17th century. The very root is the contacts that were made in places like Toledo and the Kingdom of Sicily between the Arabs and Europe. So everywhere where there has not been barriers, from the scientific point of view, has been a bloom and of evolution. So that's what has happened from the historical point of view. So those barriers are intellectual constructs that are barriers.
And the way I see it, culture is also a way that can help us to introduce difficult dialogues with certain countries. That's why I said that when we prepare our cultural program, we try to include certain issues which are very important from us as Europeans: gender equality, the fight against climate change, the democratic values. That's part of the European identity. And when we develop these programs with countries in the Middle East, or in the Far East, or in Africa, North of Africa, where we have a set of centers, almost in every country. What we try is also to introduce these difficult dialogues in a very relaxed atmosphere, because we want them to understand that this is part of our DNA, and that's something that's part of the dialogue. So culture is certainly an element that it not just provide us with an identity, but it helps us in the dialogue with the other. And you said that culture sometimes is a barrier. Indeed it is. And we have very difficult dialogues with certain countries. But it's the only way. It's the only way not to establish this exchange of ideas, this mobility, which is so important for them to understand how we feel, and for us to understand how they see things, of course.
Yeah, because I was thinking that sometimes culture can be weaponized. If you want to attack a certain group of people, it's very easy, because it hurts very deeply to attack their culture. And we have seen that at war, how, in the Balkans, where I was also involved in the cultural heritage, you see how one community would destroy the Muslim mosques, so they would destroy the churches. And, so how can we make sure that that is not weaponized and is not used to destroy somebody else's identity or sense of community?
I'll give you an example that it's less dramatic to the examples that you mentioned, but it shows the way we want to do things. I said that just yesterday, the director of the Instituto Cervantes was in the United States. He was in El Paso, and he was inaugurating an extension of our center in Albuquerque. And the idea is that when you face the challenges that sometimes come from the United States with the idea of English only, that gives the idea that that country is a graveyard for other languages, what we want to introduce is the positive side of the story, which is a claim for bilingual societies where somebody who speaks Spanish and English in the United States is somebody who is richer than other people that has only one language is spoken. And is in that sense that we want to move the dialogue and the conversation.
Well, that was absolutely fascinating discussion. We're coming softly to and slowly to the end of our event today, as it's 2 o'clock. I think that we can all agree that culture can only enrich us, ourselves, but also in our interrelation with others. You were saying, Rodrigo, in a very, very eloquent way, that whenever there has been a mix of cultures, there has been a success, there has been development, there has been a new era arriving. We have seen the importance of science from Cristina and how we can combine all these different disciplines in order to move forward and to create new things that are good for all of us, for mankind in general. So I would really, and we have seen, of course, from Rafael, the importance of cultural diplomacy and the great work that is being done, spearheaded by the Cervantes Institute. So I would like to thank everyone, and of course, Philippe for the brilliant moderation, and Gonzalo for giving us this opportunity, and really looking forward to our next session. I think colleagues can already see the quality of the discussions that we can have, and looking forward to the next time. So hasta la vista. Thank you very much, everybody.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Karen, if you can please put an end to our session today.
Yes, thank you to all. I will stop the recording now.